Welcome to our series on how public sector and critical infrastructure leaders can better detect and respond to cyber threats by taking new approaches to security operations. As cyber attacks increase in number and severity, it's important not only to stay up to date on the latest technology solutions, but also on the best operating practices. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and joining us to talk about the benefits of preparing proactively for cyber threats are Matt Trushinski, Vice President of Product Marketing at Arctic Wolf Networks, and Patty Ryan, Senior Director and Chief Information Security Officer at QuidelOrtho. Matt and Patty, thank you so much for joining us. And let me start with you, Matt. How are organizations really needing to prepare themselves for breaches today? And why is proactive readiness increasingly important?
So great question. And thank you for having us. We're super happy to be here. I think you put it into the title of this session here today, which is security operations, so taking a security operations point of view to actually reducing risk inside your environment when it comes to being breached or having an attack. And part of that security operations point of view is being proactive. I think there's a few aspects of it. If you think about it like preparing for a potential fire in your home, you need a few different things. One, you need a plan for when that happens, right? Where are we going to meet? Where are we going to run to? What window should I head to? And in our world, that's all about incident readiness and having a very clear incident readiness plan. So should a fire occur, you know exactly how you're going to behave and what you're going to do. And then it becomes a layered protection point of view. In your home, you've got fire alarms, smoke detectors, you've got a fire extinguisher, and you've got kind of all these systems in place to make sure that should something occur, you can respond to and you know what's happening very quickly. In security operations land, we call that detection and response, and having technologies, procedures, practices in place to make sure that you can respond quickly. So getting proactive is everywhere from having a plan to having technologies and policies and procedures and people in place to be able to respond to that, all the way to having technology spot and integrated and attack surface visibility to make sure that you understand how someone might get in, your critical assets, what they might obtain, and how you would react to and keep your either business or organization running during that time.
Well, Patty Ryan, let me welcome you here. And let me ask if you would give us a brief sense of the scope of your organization, who you serve, et cetera, and how are you preparing proactively to reduce the risks of cyber threats?
Thank you once again for having me on here. QuidelOrtho is a medical device manufacturer. Think of it as the large blood analyzers that meet an American Red Cross, or the clinical chemistry analyzers that are in labs in various hospitals around the world. Also, we do a lot of point of care. So you can walk into Walgreens and get a COVID test and take it home. We do a lot of that diagnostic work. The way we look at risk and the way we look at preparing is twofold. One is really about not only our enterprise, our email, our data, et cetera, but what risk are we presenting to our customers? What risk are we presenting to those hospitals for which our chemistry analyzers are part of their Internet of Things, their interconnected web? So we really need to look at it twofold. Part of how we look at preparedness is going to be looking at not just the technical aspects, the in the trenches work that Matt very, very well articulated. I tend to look also at the executive level. I look to make sure that my leadership understands their role in governance and accountability with regards to security, their need for supporting the security program, and understand that they're part of the tone and culture of a security by design across the organization. So I spend a lot of time educating those that are in my peer group and above to why they need to care and gain acceptance.
Well, Matt, I appreciated your analogy earlier about fire prevention and that you can have systems, but you also need an operating plan. Describe the capabilities an organization has to have in place to first detect and respond to breaches to minimize risks. And also, how do you ensure that you have the right capabilities and processes to detect and respond to security incidents so that you can indeed be resilient to an attack and prevent more in the future?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And there's two key things that we work with our customers on proactively to really kind of harden their environment. One is a huge amount of attacks still come from vulnerabilities, right? It's not a super hot topic and no one really likes to discuss vulnerabilities, but still a huge source of problems and a huge source of entry points into environments. So proper vulnerability management and prioritization is a huge component of being resilient. And then, Patricia touched on it, which is the human element, the human attack surface. We see in our data roughly 90+% of attacks start with some sort of human involvement or human error. So educating and creating a culture internally about security awareness, and knowing what risk is presented to the human attack surface is also really critical. So those two kind of proactive, both vulnerabilities and the people aspect, super important hardening. In terms of detection and response, responding to it quickly, it's about one, having full coverage of your attack surface, right? Can you bring in telemetry to actually analyze it and then see what's happening across your network, your endpoints, your identity systems, your cloud, and make sure your entire attack surface is covered. Then two, how do you respond, right? When the bells go off, who takes a look, who investigates, who triages it, what are the escalation paths they need to go to, how they work through an incident, contain, remediate, all those kind of practices, they need to be really predetermined, right? You don't want to be in the fire trying to figure out where the fire extinguisher is. So that's all part of the kind of, again, to your point, the security operations point of view, which is we want to look at that holistically and bring it together into a holistic plan and kind of tie all those elements together.
Well, Patty, talk to us a little about what your organization does to ensure that you have the capabilities and processes in place to detect and respond to security incidents in order to remain resilient.
Some of it really resolves around governance, and that's a buzzword. I know people might take it for a lot of different meanings. I look at it to say, are we working effectively with the tools and processes in our organization? So where's our coverage? Where's our gaps? I'm not looking at counting the amount of alerts that are coming from a firewall or the amount of pings that are coming from an endpoint. It's really about how are we responding? What are we seeing from those alerts? What do we need to do to evolve? And does management understand the investments that need to be made ongoing for the program? Also, awareness campaigns. Think about the fact that your human is your weakest link 99% of the time, be it a S3 bucket configuration error or clicking on a phishing email. Really making sure that our organization globally, no matter if you're in technology or in commercial or in finance, understands the risks, understands simply what they need to do, understand the security team exists as SMEs to really help proactively mitigate risk. That's a big one. Also, we do tabletops. Tabletops are all about practice. I have a when, not if mentality. Something's going to happen. So let's make sure that we're dealing with the event, not how to react to the event. Recently, we just had an executive tabletop. So it was all about the chief executives in our organization looking at their role as leaders. So if we have an issue, how do we do communication effectively to regulatory bodies? How do we handle customer issues? How do we handle cyber insurance? How do we handle a lot of other things? It's about making sure you have that exact practice and understanding of roles, responsibilities in the heat of the moment across the organization, not just the one-off incident responders who may work with IT operations to react to alerts.
Patty, you raised some really important points about engaging in the executive suite to practice these things, and also some of the tangential issues beyond just the security incident itself. So thank you for outlining that. Matt, back to you to kind of build on your fire analogy. I think you'd agree it's a race against time to mitigate the impact of security incidents once they happen. Talk to us a little about what's needed to act quickly to make sure that you're responding during an attack in a really quick and efficient way.
Yeah, I think, without going back too far into what we've already talked about, again, the plan is so important, right? And knowing who's going to do what, especially if you're working with an external party, like let's say you're partnering with Arctic Wolf, having that outlined about what do you want us to do and how do you want us to react on your behalf? What do you want to do and how do you want to be communicated with? So having the ability to say contain an endpoint or contain a server, but also knowing what is, non or something that you don't want to be impacted, like what are the critical systems that you don't want actions against, that it all helps just the race against time, right? As an attack is happening, we can, typically respond to an incident in under 10 minutes. And that includes the investigation and triage of an incident. And I know for a lot of organizations, even getting to 24/7 in terms of coverage and eyes on glass is a huge challenge, right? Financially and operationally, finding people to go sit in those seats. So that kind of work to be done about having the visibility across all attack surfaces, the aggregated data, the intelligence to weed through those alerts and actually turn them to actual items, investigations, and how doing that all 24/7 is a huge lift and a huge tax on organizations that maybe aren't at the scale where they have their own full operational SOC. So I think, a lot of it comes down to just having someone in the seat to be able to do that alerting and triage and investigation, and then the expertise required to know how to respond very quickly, to remediate and to recover and to get things back to a clean state. The attackers know that, Christmas, Thanksgiving, 3 a.m., those are the times to attack, because those are the times it's least likely to have someone monitoring your environment.
Absolutely. Well, Patty, I'd like to just double back briefly. What lessons did you learn and did your executives learn from your tabletop exercises about acting quickly to respond to an attack that you might share with our audience?
Well, I think it was very eye-opening for them to see how a scenario could evolve. We handle tabletops where they're scenario-based. We start with a premise, like you would in real life, like a real incident. You find out a little bit more and you throw that into the ring. You're bringing the different executives in real time and briefing them and having them make decisions. Then the scenario changes. And I think that to them was, or we were asking them questions about trade-offs. Well, if we lose this manufacturing line, here's the ransom payment. How much of the daily loss of revenue will pack? So do we pay the ransom or not? How long is it going to take for recovery? It was those practical questions at the executive level that made them pause, which actually then reaffirms that idea of the operational mindset. Really need to make sure that everyone understands how things work, how to recover. It's not about a tool, it's not about a magic widget. It's about how you run your day-to-day business and make sure you're really steeped in how it works so that you can make appropriate decisions in the moment if problems arise.
Well, I think what you're describing there is kind of the fundamentals of incident response, right? Sort of this combination of processes and tools to identify and contain and remediate cyber attacks and make decisions quickly and then restore the organization to kind of this pre-incident operational mode. Can you talk a little about how your organization actually develops and strategizes its incident response plan?
A lot of it is, like I said, day to day. We find out every time we're doing an assessment of a warehouse or of manufacturing or of a different area of our environment, like research and development, even a strategic partner, because remember, third parties are critical to our evolution of any organization that's building something. It's really making sure we understand the fundamentals in each area of how things work. And then you're trying to tie back to where are the premier risks or the highest risks that we need to make sure we mitigate. I'm going to go back to always patching. Where are your backups? Do you know who has access? And let's make sure we got stuff encrypted and keep it at that level. And then we can build on that. But if you don't have those fundamentals, any IR plan is just going to be on paper because your reaction will not be effective.
And Matt, what else would you add? Are maybe some key elements or checklists for executive teams for, developing a proactive incident response management response?
I think Tricia did a great job of highlighting the fundamentals and starting with those kind of building blocks. I'd say the big challenge, and we know, is that companies with incident response plans, when they come into our incident response services, the ones with those plans are remediated anywhere between 24 to 72 hours faster, right? So if that's costing you money or your organization damage, that's a pretty good ROI on having that plan. So I think one is how can we start to quantify that for the executives and say, hey, here's what we need to mitigate risk, and here's what we need to do should something occur to reduce the blast radius of that risk, and give them and start making the value-based case for the investments and helping to understand why the people, tools, and policies need to be put in place. And if we are getting to a place where there are obstructions and people are looking for value and ROI and financial metrics around investments in security, helping to report up to our executives that this IR plan is ultimately not just doesn't make good security sense, but also makes good financial sense for the business.
Absolutely. Well, Matt Trushinski and Patty Ryan, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your respective insights about the art of proactively preparing for incident response and sharing some of your best practices with us as well. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.